Hello everyone. Hi, I am Rahul Bagadia, Managing Director and Partner at P Manifold. I welcome you all. As P Manifold, we have been organizing this India and Global EV webinar series for last 2 years. This is a 20 plus webinar in the line. And today's discussion, we will focus on electric trucks. We will have a broad background on the global purview of this new fast growing electric vehicle segment in freights. And then we will go into a very detailed case study implemented by P Manifold. And we will understand like how a fleet in electric trucks is designed and its techno-commercial feasibility. I also take this opportunity to welcome our experts, Mr. Vikrant and Mr. Kaustubh Mohapatra, who has kindly made time to share their knowledge and views on this discussion topic today. With that, I would like to invite my colleague, Ms. Sodamini Telan. She is a consultant, sustainable transport and freights at P Manifold and have been working in e-mobility and broader freight segments at P Manifold. So, Damini, over to you.
Today, we want to focus on a very particular topic for India, developing countries, and global countries. That how do we decarbonize our freight systems? And I'll be giving the starting opening presentation for to set up the context for e-trucks, which is particularly where we are particularly focusing on heavyweight vehicles, and we are focusing on e-trucks, and we'll dive into the detail further. So I'm thankful to our panelists and you all for joining the webinar. So is my screen visible to all?
Yes, please go ahead.
Up to my first slide. Why do we need to decarbonize freight transportation? One visible major reason and the concern is of GHG emission and pollution happening globally, where the road transportation accounting for nearly the 75% of the total carbon emissions, and road freight transport is contributing to the 30% of the pollution in global CO2 emissions. Which is now, if we compare to the other modes of transport, different modes of transport in terms of GHG emissions, the ship transportation is comparatively cheaper and a low emission option for freight transport, but there is still dependency on truck to cater end users, as truck provide us the flexible and accessible option for freight transportation. So as we need to decarbonize, there are several options to decarbonize freight transportation, such as first we can think of modal shift, to think another option to the truck. Second will be the aggregation of trucks. Third, we can say the emission norms. To if we make the emission norms stringent, it will help in decarbonizing the freight transportation. Other is the technology option we can look for, which constitutes the electric trucks, fuel cell trucks, etc. So we are particularly here focusing on the electric truck and its application in Indian context, and we are bringing a strong case study in our consecutive sessions. So here is to give global overview of market. Globally, truck market is growing, and it's estimated to reach at 1.48 billion in 2019, and it will increase by the growth rate of 14.3% from 2020 to 25 year 2025. And in this currently the battery electric trucks segment is accounted for the largest revenue share, over 85% in 2019. So, given this context, there are key factors which are driving the market growth, which include the demand in logistics on the IC vehicles, yeah, through the European norms, and incentives for adopting zero emission vehicles are some of the key factors in driving the market growth. So, what are the key opportunities and challenges in implementing e-trucks? So, opportunities include a large freight transport market, multiple applications such as cargo, last mile connectivity. Also, intercity transport is one of the major application. Um, Also, EVs give you the clean technology advantage, such as quiet motor, low risk of fuel spillage, etc. Uh, the reduction in lithium-ion battery cost till 2030 is also considered as a major benefit. The market trend, including e-commerce and increasing demand for freight transport. Uh, then quick retrofitting and easy quick retrofitting uh, uh, and quick replacement of engine, which is one of the key benefits. Also, challenges include the range anxiety for long and medium haul, limited trials, batteries not needed to compete the diesel and gas in terms of energy density. But the new technologies are working on that, so that this challenge can be further converted to the opportunity. Then charging complexities and high charging infrastructure cost is one of the challenges. Then energy consumption is different for various routes and weather conditions, loading and unloading conditions, and uh, another aspect will be the more powerful battery if we choose for operating truck. It will add upon more weight and more capital investment into the trucks. So these were some of the opportunities and challenges in this sector. Uh, Now I hand over the control to Mr. Rahul Bagdia, who is MD uh, of MDP Manifold Business Solutions, and is the moderator of today's webinar. Thank you, Rahul.
Thank you very much, Saudamini. I think some interesting elements that I picked from your well presentation, like the overall truck market is growing by 4% globally, but electric truck adoption and growth is expected 14%. So I think EVs within the overall new sales are going to rise, and as what world is kind of expecting, it is expected to be 15% sales by 2030. So I think we are talking of some 4 million e-trucks sales, new sales coming in the year 2030. So I think that's definitely a very good kind of forward looking to the industry that industry can note. And another important point that you made was between medium and heavy size fleet, it is most likely the heavy trucks that is getting picked up for electrification. So that I think is another good news for the industry. So with that, I would want to introduce our two panelists. Mr. Vikrant Vaidya, he is my co-partner at P Manifold. He leads electric vehicle systems engineering practice. He has 20 years plus background in automotive industry, where he has designed hybrids, full electrics with multi global OEMs, especially in the car domain. And since more than 6+ months, we together have been working in really detailing the EV systems engineering aspects. So welcome, Vikrant. Vikrant has worked on one recent consulting assignment where we have looked into e-truck application for India. So a case study will be presented today by him. And we have worked with this case study together with our other panelist, Kaustubh Mohapatra, again a very good friend, and colleague. Kaustuv is a co-founder of a startup, Energy Byte. Very interesting startup working on developing energy charging solutions. Started as, I would say, more on the IT side and developing the entire charging management systems, CMS, and their own stack. And over time, I think with new opportunities in India, they have also got into the extended value chain of charger selection, consulting, deployment, commissioning, and looking forward also to get integrated to becoming the energy operator. So they have interesting profile of projects that they are working upon, and he together with Vikrant will be walking and presenting this today's detailed case study on electric truck applications. With that, welcoming both of our expert panelists on board, I request Vikrant to present the case study.
Thank you, Rahul. Am I audible and is my screen visible?
Yes, Vikrant, go ahead.
Okay, great. So thanks a lot for the introduction and a very good context setting also by Saudamini. So oftentimes what we see is there are generic assessments of feasibility of e-trucks, and a lot of times those don't go very well. Recently in one of the social media posts, I saw that for heavy commercial vehicles, it is absolutely not possible to go purely battery electric, and you will need fuel cells or some range extender. While it may be true for the applications which are long distance, long hauls, however, short to medium distances, it could be still a case-to-case basis, and that is why we did this study to understand the specificities of a particular use case and see if the e-truck is a feasible alternative for this particular application. So this application we worked for one of the clients in fleet, which is currently completely IC engine truck fleet, mostly 40 and 50 tonner vehicles from Indian OEMs. And they are looking at the possibilities of converting this fleet successively or depending upon what this case study presents uh, into as much as possible or completely into electric fleet. And they want to look at both the comparative business case against the IC engine fleet they have currently, and also the benefits in terms of operating costs, also in terms of any other leverages they have on deploying these e-trucks, and finally for overall benefit of the environment as well. So with that, I will go through the specific slides of this case study that we have performed. So the objective, as I said, was the techno-commercial feasibility of a e-truck fleet for cold handling, and the deliverables were broadly identified as the technical feasibility of e-trucks in terms of energy, in terms of power, and so on. Then how the energy requirements are there for charging these e-trucks, because it's a fleet, it's a considerably large fleet, as you will see in subsequent slides. And both the energy and the power requirements have to be understood. And then taking it up on the cost aspect of it, what will be the capital expenditure, the operational expenditure, and how it compares with the current ICE fleet. The approach and methodology that we followed was starting with a e-truck model and correlating it, and then applying the use cases. There are multiple mines from where the coal is supplied, and there can be multiple routes as well. What are the speeds, typical speeds on these routes that the truck maintain? They are different in laden and unladen conditions. and then any layovers, etc. So these make up the use case, a very specific set of use cases. And then going to the fleet level, the fleet scheduling and sizing. I will come to how important this is in subsequent slide. Then coming to charger infrastructure sizing, how many chargers, what specs, which Kaustubh will take you through. And he will continue into the power demand and energy demand, and eventually to the total cost of ownership. So looking at the vehicles, we start with what is the existing ICE fleet. Although it's a mix of multiple makes and multiple capacities, the dominant model among the current ICE fleet is the 50 tonner from Tata, which has a load capacity of little under 41 tons. And then the other specs are in front of you. The important one to note here is it costs around 40 lakhs. And then the proposed e-truck, these specifications are a mixture of what we found in a similar segment e-truck available in India, and some of the things are coming from the requirement side. So all the specifications are not available in the public domain yet for this truck. However, depending upon the requirements, we have sized some of the things. For example, the loading capacity I have kept same as the ICE truck, and then we have accounted for the extra battery mass that will be there. So as I said, we have made sure that the load capacities remain same. It is understood that they are similar, if not exactly same. What we used for estimating the energy consumption of this truck on various routes is a Scilab model. So Scilab is alternative to MATLAB Simulink, which most of you might be familiar with. It is a 1D system modeling tool in which we have built a e-truck simulation model with all the aspects of it. And then we have used the inputs from the truck tracking system on the current fleet to input the velocity profiles and calculate the energy, distance and energy, which gives us the energy efficiency as well as the total energy required when we are supposed to charge. The first step in any virtual simulation is correlation. So there are two levels of correlation that we did before going into the modeling of the energy. So first was the basic vehicle model, irrespective of whether it is an electric truck or IC engine truck, and we ran for different weights, and we came up with what is the energy requirement per kilometer for this vehicle. Then what we did was, since we did not simulate the engine or motors or anything, we first applied some of the efficiency numbers to this energy required at the wheel, and came up with what would be the diesel required, and from there per kilometer efficiency, so per liter efficiency in terms of kilometers per liter. And the numbers that we got correlate fairly well with what we understood from the current fleet operators for this particular application. So the average that they get for the round trip, the loaded and unloaded, is around 2 kilometers per liter. The second level of correlation that we undertook was for the e-truck now. So we also had some, through our consultations, some understanding of what is the claimed energy consumption, that is kilowatt hour per kilometer for this e-truck model. And those were one for unloaded, 1 kilowatt hour per kilometer, and around 1.5 kilowatt hour per kilometer for loaded truck. And when we initially ran these uh, uh, e-truck, our e-truck model for a particular route, we came up with the unloaded portion was fairly okay. The loaded portion was quite off, and the average was also off because of the loaded portion being off. And then we also checked if the claimed mileage is on a milder cycle. So when we used a milder cycle of around 27 kph max speed against what we have for from the GPS data, so there we did get a good correlation. So it seems the claimed mileage is actually on a milder cycle that the manufacturer has verified. So with these two correlations, we went ahead into the modeling of the use cases. So what we received, as I said, was the GPS data along with the speed, and that had to be converted into a speed versus time profile, and it had to be fed into the simulation model. And once we run these simulations, we come up with the energy requirement. The two mines are at different distances and go through different routes. So as you can see, mine 1 is having higher energy requirement and lower energy efficiency or higher energy consumption per kilometer. So there is quite a difference in terms of both the energy consumption per kilometer, and the overall energy required is even higher because of the distance being also more for the mine 1. Then we went ahead and did some scheduling of this fleet. So one truck schedule, how it would look like. So we did have the understanding to the mines and get back from the mines. Of course, the loaded truck would be going much slower than an unloaded truck. So that's the difference that you see here. And then what is the charging requirement? So how much energy would be required for charging, and how long it will take for recharging it for the next trip. I'm just presenting one mine here, but similar thing was done for the other. And then we also trace how the SOC looks like. So when we are traveling, it obviously consumes the battery, and it goes down up to 23%, and then it can recharge back to near 100. So this is kind of the use case for the battery as well. How much cycling of the battery happens over this trip. And based on that, and the charging time that we computed, we went and did a charger schedule. So one charger, if it is reused truck after truck, how many trucks it can cater to through the day. And we came up with around 8 trucks can be catered through one single charger. I'll go to the next slide to better explain that. So what you see here in blue is actually the trip and the subsequent unloading. And this is where the vehicle is available for charging. So the first truck gets the charger as soon as it is ready. The second truck has to wait and so on because of the charging time being different from the headways. And that is why you can see the 8th truck gets charged and barely has any margin left for the 9th truck to get charged and leave with half an hour headway. So this is how we made sure that we are trying to share as many trucks as possible with the one charger, while being realistic, having enough margins around the charging. And there is also a charger idle time when the trucks are running, particularly the first truck till it gets back. So there is a total idle time of 8 hours in this case. In another case, in the case of second mine, it was much lower because we could share more trucks because it was a shorter distance and shorter duration trip. So we can share more trucks on the same charger and have lesser idle time. So with that, we came up with what is the fleet size. So the coal demand per day assumed to be 10,000 tons and equally distributed between the two mines. So the per schedule demand would be 5,000 tons, and the number of trucks that are calculated are 122 per mine or 244 total. And the chargers required to cater to this fleet would be around 32, and we have recommended 2 spare chargers. With that, I would invite Kaustubh to go through the next few slides up to the conclusion, as it is more about the charging and what kind of charger would be suitable for this kind of application. Over to you, Kaustubh.
Thank you very much, Vikrant sir, and thank you all for a splendid introduction. So it's a very important element that we need to understand about do we need any specific new kind of a standard or kind of a methodology of having charging infrastructure facilitation for the electric trucks fleets. As Vikrant sir rightly mentioned, the scheduling of the charger is very critical, and moreover, considering the ambient conditions of India, so a suitable charger needs to be selected that delivers the right amount of power so that the operations of the fleet doesn't get impacted anyway. So we could arrive after assessing chargers available readily in the market that is supplied basically for electric buses that are being deployed across multiple cities. So one being a 120 watt, 20 kilowatt capacity. The image use, of course, is of Delta Electronics India Limited. We have similar chargers from other major OEMs available in the country, and those chargers are capable of having operating voltage of in the normal three-phase 5-wire system, having a RYB neutral and earth, and that can deliver voltages up to 850 volt DC. That's the case of a 240 kilowatt charger, and the maximum current carrying capacity would be the peak current, rather I would say, would be 200 amperes. And the important aspect here we need to understand as the conversion losses involved as well, because of the AC to DC conversion. And so the available, the OEM claim, so the where efficiency lies somewhere between 92 and 95%. So an losses of 5 to 8% could be expected around these charges, which needs to be factored in while infrastructure sizing. And the connector that we have selected with this particular model is CCS Combo 2. That is also readily available as on date. So depends on the manufacturer and the OEM. So the way the bus manufacturers or the truck manufacturers actually don't manufacture their own chargers except in few cases. They go on compatibility analysis, the BMS matching, and the rate of delivery, charging, and control conditions of charging are being tested during FATs and site acceptance as well. So the CHAdeMO combo, the CHAdeMO connector as well as the CCS combo 2, anything works, depends upon what kind of connector is acceptable to the manufacturer of the electric truck. So over the next slide, please. So as it was rightly mentioned that number of charger requirement at a particular station level for could be up to 8. So this is kind of a top level representation of a single line diagram that has been developed for this particular case into consideration, where when we have a incomer directly from the grid, being an HT supply of 11 kV, and the total, if we assess on basis of considering the losses across the transformer as well as the charges and certain auxiliary load of about 25-50 kilowatt range, the overall power requirement for which contract demand would be needed would be about 2 MVA. So that should we could find. And the good thing in this sizing aspect would be to have certain scalability in the infrastructure as well. That is having some spare breakers, so that as we scale up the fleet, so we would not need to go back and redo the entire infrastructure or take a separate HT connection. So at the planning stage itself, we need to plan such that the electrical infrastructure could be augmented easily. So that is how special considerations have been taken in sizing of the transformers and the entire bus bar as well. And we could see on the output side having multiple breakers. All are this is the LT panel, LT bus bar that we see of 1000 ampere current capability, and even having auxiliary supplies provisions being provided from the same panel. So what happens is the charger gets installed after at location of this distribution assembly or after the LT panel right from the breaker. Okay, next panel. Next slide. So here again is a very important feature which if we see that at the bottom most we have the EV charging infrastructure that's mentioned as EVCI. So all the chargers have been mandated some way, not by any regulatory force, but by acceptance of the industry to adopt to OCPP. That helps actually monitor and manage a charging infrastructure efficiently. Apart from that, we need to integrate with multiple platforms. The reason being, as it's a fleet operations, most of the operators who have been deploying such large fleets, they have an integrated transport or fleet management system of their own, where they could track the locations where the trucks are moving and what are the routes like. Basically, the system, the like that we have used to extract data that has been very useful for us to arrive and design the models and assessing the technical feasibility of electric trucks. So that platform needs to be integrated with the charges as well, so that we could actually rightly schedule. So when and understand that how could we actually enhance the utilization of these charges, because someone is going to invest on this infrastructure and it's going to cost him. And if he needs to have some ROI on that, obviously we'll come to that, how even with this system, the total cost of ownership is still seems good and better than the ICE counterparts. So this is a platform that is capable of being integrated with energy monitoring elements as well as the EV charging infrastructure side. So we have on the left side, we could see a dedicated OCPP server. So whose role is to speak to this electric vehicle charges and generates any exception because these being very high voltages of up to 850 volt DC, and any surge or any contingency being arrived at that end could have a catastrophic impact on the supply side of it. If it is a generating unit or a large load center, there might be voltage dips or surges in there. So right real-time monitoring and intelligence needs to be there for assessing what kind of a demand or what kind of a load that we are connecting to the system, and how are we efficiently managing and being prepared. Like for the case in point over here, where we have a generating station also available there, so they have adequate spinning reserve to take care of such load fluctuations. Like when we go to the next slide, we will see that there is a load requirement of a peak load requirement of maybe about 3.8 megawatt is the total load requirement. There could be a peak load requirement of 2 megawatt at some instance if multiple trucks are being connected simultaneously. So those could be easily taken care of if the system speaks to the generator systems also, so that the governor in there could actually respond integrated with the charging infrastructure system. That is how the systems could operate in tandem, and the frequency and the internal harmony of the grid could be maintained. And considering the scenario that we had built, so we had arrived at the number of trucks that could be flying over Route 1, or that is in the mine 1, and the end client would be 122, and each the truck would consume about 148 units of energy. So the charger requirement, considering the scheduling aspect, we had arrived at 16 number of chargers would be required for the Route 1 and 16 for the Route 2, with a total cumulative power requirement of 3.84 megawatts. And the total energy requirement that we arrive at for meeting the entire demand of the 244 number of trucks in a day would be 27 megawatt hour. So which, if we consider not a captive generation unit having need of transportation of uh, fuel such as coal, as in this case, or movement of any finished goods to their warehouses and all those, it's an excellent case where we could achieve ROI and with the win-win scenario for the transporter as well as the end users. Over to the next slide. So now coming, as I mentioned, like how the benefit arrives. So in considering the total cost of ownership model that was built, so we agree that the capex involvement is far lower in case of a ICE truck. So if we see in a particular case for 260 number of diesel trucks, so the purchase cost of 104 crores, and OPEX per year roughly 53. So that's a big number now. 53 crores is the OPEX cost involved. But when we see and we understand the good part in the electric mobility side is the lower cost of operations. So that is again, as the Vikrant sir has mentioned that about a post being circulated in public domains about the ineffectiveness of electric mobility in heavy vehicle transportation. So here, but we prove that we have a case, rightly, a use case, that if we have predictable demand and predictable routes, similar, we can draw analogy why the adoption took place with electric buses. And I could refer back studies done by like P Manifold, Ernst & Young, and India Smart Grid Forums also. So where they have done city level assessments, and they could have found that any application that has route predictability, kind of a monotony in the way they operate, so we have a kind of a demand assurance for them, and that makes this entire ecosystem of electric mobility favorable and viable. So here we have the numbers, like for 244 number of electric trucks, though the capex cost is fairly higher, more than I would say 100%. Number of charges, we have a requirement of 32, and obviously, like considering the maintenance and other aspects and downtime, we need to have 1 or 2 spare, about maximum to 10%, I would guess. And the charger purchase cost, again, a significant number here, we agree, that's 4.42. Total capex 224 crores. And so that is a 120 crores extra cost involvement compared to ICE counterparts. However, we see that the operational expenses is hardly 10%. So that's a number we need to look at, because we are not running a fleet for a year or two. So the fleet operations in that kind of a, whenever an industry sets up a plant, they set it up for a lifetime of 25 years, 50 years. So that's the kind of a operation they look at, the business they are in. So this logistic industry supports their business in providing them raw material or delivering their finished products. So that this reduction in their operational expenses would reduce their cost of production, as well as if they have their own generating units, and also as we understand, like in case of thermal power plants, like just mentioning a case, the PLF, if we see, has been going down significantly over the years. It's about, I think, 63% as on date. So this gives them an opportunity to use their reserves capacities for their internal usage itself. So it's a beneficial for anyone that have a captive generating setup. So net savings that we could see over here is about 47 crores for a fleet size of 244 trucks, and we achieve a payback period of, though I would say the investment of 224 crores is just 2.5 years, and these numbers would actually be uh, better for any industry having a captive generation, because the cost of generation, they could actually need to, the cost of electricity that they would get is not a retail tariff, right? So that the tariff for them would be cost of generation, and we agree there will be certain additional electricity duty as well on top of that. But still, the it would be far lesser than the any EV charging tariff available in India. Um, Even I guess the lowest ones being 4.5 or 5, the model has been built around those numbers. But for any industry having their own captive generation, these numbers would be far better. I could guarantee that. So it's a savings of about 47.78 crores. So that is a very good part that has come out of this study, and could actually motivate our client to look into these numbers and move ahead to for doing pilot deployments and transitioning into electric mobility. Over to Vikram sir.
I think also you have one more slide to go. Or
Yeah. So
okay.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah. So coming back to the business model, and like who is going to aid the industry deploy such kind of a models, considering as on date, like everyone is focusing in their core capabilities. So if anything new comes, so who is going to, the question is like, who is the service provider? Who is going to deploy it? Who is going to manage it? Apart from the decision on making what is the investment being done, so is the investment being rightly utilized, and how do we have a assured returns on those investment? That's a big question mark as on date. And with COVID, that question has become more pertinent, and is a point of deliberation about should we do it now or should we wait for better times to come. So our answer would be, this could be the best time when we could look at alternative methodologies of reducing your cost of production and enhancing your operational efficiencies. So there has been no better time than today to switch to better methodologies of and achieving operational excellence. So it's inevitable and binding as on date. So the models that we could envisage as on date would be considering this kind of a case in point, would be a company owned, company operated model, wherein the company itself invests on the infrastructure. For instance, if they have their own generating stations, captive generating stations, they have understanding of electrical network. So they won't hesitate deploying and managing infra on their own. They could invest on that, and they just the current model. We need to also appreciate that the current model is, they it's on a they engage transporters on a kind of a milestone or a delivery methodology model, wherein the transporter is being paid for the quantum of uh, material he unloads, or the number of trips he does. So that is the kind of the contractual model that is running in the prevalent conditions. So the company could directly invest on the EV charging infrastructure, considering it's a capital expenditure, of which they could have other advantages as well in the balance sheet, and they could just pay for the on a OPEX or a leasing model to the transporters on basis of whatever the contractual arrangement is. So that the advantage would be a better control over the turnaround time and other KPIs about efficiently managing and operating the fleet, and um, rightly deployment or scaling of the infrastructure so that they could plan on basis of their requirement, like how to go about it, how do we enhance, like if we need to move on from 240 trucks, diesel trucks to electric, that cannot happen overnight or cannot be a single contract. They need to do stage by stage enhancement of the infrastructure and transition, pushing the operators to move on to the greener mode of transport or the lower operational expenses mode of transport. The other model could be, because if we consider this market and the technology is evolving very fast in this space as well. So the right model which has been adopted and even with the model concession agreement was being pushed by the NITI Aayog as well was the GCC model for the electric buses. So it's similar to a build, own, operate, transfer model, wherein an operator or a service provider is engaged for a certain duration, and he comes in, deploys the entire asset, the entire infrastructure, both the electrical as well as the charging infrastructure, and builds on basis of the usage of the infrastructure or on basis of unit of electricity. And like I could reveal some numbers from the studies that we have undertaken, like if it's a assured demand kind of a model of a million units or half of that even for a year, it's hardly 2 or 3 rupees per unit would be the difference in addition to the cost of electricity. So that's anyone who comes in along with the electricity, I guess under 4.5 or 5 rupees, they could render this entire services. While if you see the cost of diesel per kilometer would be or per unit would be much higher if we compare vis-a-vis. So advantages would be with this model is the avoidance of any risk of technology obsolescence. If anything, the charger needs to be upgraded. So the service provider needs to take care of that, and that helps in even minimizing the upfront investment while reaping out the benefits of the lower operational expenses. So this is kind of a win-win scenario model that has been evolved and has been patronized by multiple state utilities across India. Over to you, Vikrant.
Thank you, Kaustubh. Yeah, that is what I would like to also summarize and conclude. Just continuing with what Kaustubh said. So the straightforward conclusions that we can draw are, they are also obvious, that the energy consumption and range of e-trucks is heavily dependent on the route profiles, as we saw. Particularly going with the correlation numbers that we had received and what we were getting for our specific application. So these kind of studies have to be performed so that there is no heartbreak afterwards. There are no wrong expectations set. Again, going to the same example, if without doing this study, if you go into investing using a 1.5 kilowatt hour per kilometer consumption of a loaded truck for your specific application, and it turns out to be almost twice, you would have a big headache on your on you. So these kind of things have to be done so that you not only have that particular application properly covered, but also do not damage the credibility or the adoption of the electric vehicles wherever they are feasible to adopt. Because these kind of not meeting the expectations, if you set the expectations correctly, the same numbers would actually look good, and then those would also be taken up as success stories and will promote more adoption. On the other hand, other things that we have to be careful about is the operational schedule. As we saw in the previous slide, the operational schedule gets you optimize the infrastructure, both the trucks as well as the charging infrastructure, and that helps you optimize the capital expenditure for the same benefit in the operational expenses. And then you have also you have seen how if you do a specific study on some of these applications, it actually does make sense. Instead of going with generic studies, what is perceived as the most common usage of the trucks, heavy trucks, and not looking at these opportunities is probably what is holding us back in getting more penetration of electric vehicles into this segment. And then, because of that, another thing that happens is we do not have enough representation or enough options in this segment. We see hardly one or two options available in heavy trucks in India, whereas the demand seems to be there. This is one of the applications, as Kaustubh also mentioned. There could be more such applications, not just the power plant or coal handling scenario, but there are many applications of heavy hauling in short to medium distances, which are still within the capabilities of the range of electric trucks. And then as the fast chargers come in, we also have to look at what is the operation of the e-trucks or any trucks, how long or how many kilometers they log per day. So we always think in terms of kilometers using the examples of passenger vehicles, buses or cars, and we can log 500, 600 or even 800 kilometers a day. But no, the trucks don't travel at those speeds. They also have layovers in between when there is a lot of driver fatigue. If you ever get an opportunity and if you have the license, do experience how strenuous it is to drive a truck even on the best of the highways. So there would be layovers and there would be opportunities to top up the charge. So it is not something which is completely infeasible as it seems to be if you just look it at superficially. So with that, I would ask Rahul to take over and maybe summarize some of his thoughts as well on these. And also we will have the question answer session.
Thank you very, very much, both Vikrant and Kaustubh. I haven't seen this detail of electric fleet planning discussion in my previous time in the industry. So I think this is definitely very, very enlightening. I think the learnings and the details, Vikrant, that you were able to lay down for e-truck applications, they will remain very similar when applied to electric buses, any freight application, or for that matter, even other fleet applications for passenger load as well. So I do encourage our participants who are here from different background and also globally to keep sharing their questions in the text window so that we can take up those questions with the panelists. Kaustubh, you are around or you have got dropped? Okay, great. Kaustubh is back. Great. Some things, Vikrant, if you may want to go on slide number 7. I think you brought a very, very important point regarding the range. One of the big issues with EVs is still there is a high deviation between the range that is stated by the OEMs for their products and what actually the end user is able to get in real duty cycle. I think some of the examples that you mentioned made it very, very clear that there are elements like loading, there are elements like actual duty cycle of the road, road conditions, speed, congestion, driver aggression, which will lead to very significant change into the range and real range that you get out of the vehicles. I think slide number 7, Vikrant, the later one. Yeah. So how accurate are these results, Vikrant? Like because we are really kind of challenging some of the vehicle efficiencies that comes out of otherwise the stated specs, which possibly are given under some very standard lab conditions, but the end user does not face that. But the entire planning happens basis to those stated specifications. So how accurate you think would be such simulation results to guide practical planning?
Yeah, sure. So before getting into the accuracy of the simulations, I will just answer the first part. What happens with OEMs is they are not designing the products for any such specific applications. The volumes still won't justify for the OEMs to come out with a very specific solutions, so to speak. There is an opportunity in electric vehicles. If you have a modular approach to your batteries, there is a possibility of still having the rest of the vehicle same and giving multiple variants in terms of the battery capacity. However, it's still not going to be such specific level analysis that the OEMs would do. They could actually look at multiple of these and choose their worst case scenarios and try and design for that. The second problem that from the OEM's perspective that they would face is, as you said, there are differences in the range that one would get depending upon the driving, depending upon the route, the terrain, the traffic conditions, and so on. As you can see here, we have this GPS data, and I have plotted the speeds here, speed ranges, and we have received 3 or 4 data sets, and if I look at them individually, they do not have the same speed profile, the same route, they do not have the same speed profile, and sometimes not even representative of the locations where they are slowing down. So there could be a number of reasons why some of these things happen. And still in this study, which was so specific, we would have to go with certain average out assumptions or certain worst case scenarios depending upon the case. So yeah, obviously from mine to mine, I'm seeing a big difference, particularly in the loaded kilowatt hour per kilometer here, almost more than 30% difference here in the kilowatt hour per kilometer, and sorry, more than 10% difference. And however, what can be done is to set the expectations right. So OEMs have to compete with other OEMs, and if one OEM puts up what we call a sticker value of range or fuel economy, other OEMs will have to put under the same standard conditions. So there are two things. One is those standard conditions, if they are no longer representative, they should be revised. They should be looked at and revised to give, if they are far away from the reality, successively they move far away from the reality. So they have to be looked at. And secondly, the OEMs also have the responsibility of having promoting this penetration, and one of the aspects, as I mentioned earlier, is managing the expectations around the product, and that is extremely important. So it may get you 1 or 2 or a few hundred or few thousand sales, but if those expectations are not met, eventually those sales will dry up. And even if the product is actually good on its own merit, just because of the wrong expectations, it would suffer. So it's an act of balancing between these setting the right expectations and getting your first customers, luring them through the standard condition range and energy efficiency. Coming to the accuracy of the models, yeah, see, the models are as accurate as the detail that you can put in, both in terms of the input data and in terms of the models. And for them to be useful for such studies, there would be a range. So I would say these studies, since we had a lot of specific inputs, I would go ahead and say that they should be accurate within less than 10%. They would be good. But if you and they would be good enough for the studies of these kind. When you are looking at improving your product, you obviously need more accurate models where you would have access to the input of the vehicle itself. So here we used some assumptions in terms of what motor is being used, what is the battery discharge rates, and so on. However, if you are designing a product, you would have access to more accurate input data in terms of vehicle. And if you also look at some of these case studies and get use cases also to the level of accuracy that we have, those two together can get you really accurate models, which can help you assess what is your next model year benefit, what are your improvements, and you can also assess technologies that you want to adopt for their benefit if your model is even more accurate.
Great, Vikrant. Thank you very much. I wish you and the team to further continue developing and expanding the EVSys model library that you are building across different applications, different fleet models. So that is great. Kaustubh, I think you made very important point. Thank you for a very nice presentation and tying it up so well, not only to just charging infrastructure design considerations, but also connecting it to the business model and different applications. I think you made a very solid point that the predictability of the routes and the captive generation, this two kind of a things really give a very powerful application which kind of exists with, I would say, like lot of all I would say not lot of, but pretty much with all of the thermal generating plants, right, which are having their generation and they require coal, and they also have the fly ash output which goes out, right. So these are all the heavy truck applications which I think could work well with the thermal plants. Then second could be the captive generators, the IPP generators who are into some other business. So they would have their own captive generator for which they need to handle the input output, but also for their overall raw materials and finished good. So they can be a very good case. What other applications of this trucking business that you think, Kaustubh, could really be the early adopters in India and developing country context?
Very good question, Rahul, to put across. If we assess the value chain of any industry, so we find them certain predictability in their business or in their supply chain. So we have, like I would mention, the MSME clusters. So with MSME clusters, we have at certain locations, certain kind of industry, be it fisheries, be it pharmaceuticals, or kind of industry being deployed at few locations in the country, and they have predictability of their supply chain with nearby locations, be it transportation of, as you mentioned, in case of thermal plants, that is, if it is a fly ash for ash bricks ancillary industry. Similarly, for textiles or any other industry, it's kind of a nearby location. If we consider the ancillary industry that is dependent, the hub, automobile hub, right, in Gurgaon, Manesar region, which are kind of ancillary industry to Maruti. So there is again a predictable route in there. So similarly, we could find multiple instances across our country. We could have where we could have predictability in routes and have a right kind of a demand for investment in such ecosystem of electric mobility.
Okay, great. Vikrant, you have any other points to add on the applications that you further want to add upon what Kaustubh made?
Yeah, I think he covered the segment particularly which we target and we targeted in this case study, and it has wide applications, not just as he said, not just into this particular coal handling or material handling. Also, what I would think is in the first presentation which Saudamini had put, she talked about replacing one of the alternatives is to replace the trucks by some other mode of transport, say the rail routes or shipping or air. That could still have that could still convert some of the long range applications of trucks to shorter range. So getting to the loading station, whether it is a railroad station or a shipping, and from there on to get into the distribution, at least up to the hubs, as Kaustubh was mentioning, from where smaller vehicles can take it to the retailers, or going up to if it's a semi-finished good, going up to the next processing unit. So there are many applications of short and medium trucks, short and medium distances for trucks, which should be looked upon and which can be tapped as your first level of penetration.
Great, great. No, I think that's a wonderful suggestion. Like, I know specific to India, like, though in terms of cost, in terms of GHG emissions, ship or train transport of freight would be much cheaper and economic and environmental better versus the road transport, but only because of the limited supply side capacity and constraint and missed operational SLAs, like lot of long haul travels are happening. So I think from the broader decarbonization aspect, I think you made a very good point that the intermodal shift, even in the freight, needs to be looked into rightly to really plan it well. I'm also reading out some questions that we have started getting from the audience, Kaustubh and Vikrant. One important aspect in EVs is battery life cycling and replacement cost. So there is one question which is talking about, like, in our assumptions of the operating cost, which shows almost 10% of the overall diesel cost. Has battery replacement be taken into consideration, the life cycle of the battery replacement? So can you share about, like, with your current estimates and discussion, like, when do you expect the battery to be recycled for these applications or sort to be replaced? And has that been accounted in your overall calculations?
Sure. Excellent question. And yes, the batteries do have finite life, unlike fuel tanks. So they have to be understood. It has not been considered in this TCO for a couple of reasons. First of all, the cycles, the battery life and the battery cycles for applicability in automotive field, it is growing substantially year on year. So let me give you an example. We were looking at initial lithium ion batteries. We were looking at around 500-600 cycles till you drop down to, say, around 75% of the capacity or 70% of the capacity. And if you look at some of these applications, so here the battery is going to be charged and discharged every day. So one charge discharge cycle per day, that gives you around 350-360 charge discharge cycles a year. And then in a couple of years, we'll be looking at replacement of the battery if 600-700 is the life. However, if you look at some of the latest battery packs, people have been experimenting on, even in lithium ion, there are multiple chemistries, and people have been experimenting on that. And you nowadays find batteries which have the same cycle life of in excess of 2000 cycles. So there you are looking at more than 6, 7, 8 years of battery life. And then in that case, you are actually quite close to matching the truck's own life, which is around 8 to 10 years under such heavy usage. So yeah, the battery replacement is still a possibility within the life of the vehicle, but it is fast moving, catching up with the life of the vehicle, particularly in commercial segment, where the life expectancy is actually lower than personal use vehicles, where the mileage accumulation is so low year on year that you actually end up having hardly 100 or 200 charge discharge cycles a year. And still even if your life expectancy is 12 to 15 years, you are still not very far in terms of the batteries catching up. So yeah, in this case, it has not been considered for a couple of reasons. One is the payback period that we saw for this extra capital expenditure is 2.5 years, and we are pretty sure that the batteries would last more than that, at least 4 to 5 years they would last. Particularly if the charging and discharging is being done systematically, which may not be the case with individual usage. And secondly, the capital expenditure would actually you could actually have those batteries replaced as part of capital expenditure in 5 or 6 years, and your case is still quite positive in terms of operational expenditure.
Thank you very much. So I think the point is, yes, uh, for the kind of this particular application, since the payback from the operational cost savings is coming in less than the battery life. So currently it is not being included, but a full-fledged business case that P Manifold has made for the client, that will include the battery replacement cost and overall TCO. Coming back to you, Kaustubh, like in your business model, you did talk about the two types of business models. The operational logistic industry is fairly well settled industry where mostly it's outsourced contracts, basically per tonnage basis to the end to the provider who actually owns the truck and then run it against contract. In that situation, do you think with the kind of a operational advantage and savings that e-trucks bring, what will be those initial financing barriers that has to be kind of supported or crossed by the industry to really allow this logistic providers to make new investments into the electric trucks? Kaustubh.
Okay. Right. Uh, Again, a good question, Rahul. So that has been the right question that we have been asked right through this project. Like, how could we help, or why should our operators switch to electric when they are successfully running a huge fleet of, like, there are multiple operators, some operating about 80 trucks, some operating 100 trucks. So why should they switch to electric when but we during the study could even find like certain percentage of the fleet are being replaced with diesel, and they are being paid, as you rightly mentioned, on a per tonnage basis. So with our client coming up with their own infrastructure and like the operational expenses and the savings that the operator could also make for delivery of a per ton of the product or of the good would also significantly go down. So that will help him maximize his profits as well. So as I was mentioning during the presentation, it's a kind of a win-win scenario for the both the stakeholders, the one providing the services as well as the one who is delivering the fleet services or the operations of the fleet.
Great. So I think like a right financial proposition and support from the banking or investment partners into allowing procurement of this fleet and spreading it over long years, because these are very kind of sure, predictable demand, as you have put, Kaustav, must give right IRR to fund and finance such projects. So I think overall, then I really kind of would believe that there is a strong case, even in for a much bigger, heavier truck, short to medium distances. There is a strong positive case for adoption of electric trucks in Indian condition. And I think the situation would be better for the smaller trucks that get used for e-commerce and other last mile delivery, which we have also evaluated. I would say that the industry is really catching up. More and more players now are getting into the e-truck manufacturing in India. Players like Costov's company, Energy Byte, and many more have jumped into and taking part in setting up the entire energy operator role. And as Kostov has put, like with assured demand from a client and long predictability, there are players like him who are very willing to kind of invest in setting up the charging infrastructure for solving the range anxiety problem that may come for the longer haul electric truck business. So with that, I would want to take this opportunity to thank our panelists, Vikrant and Kaustubh both, for making time for a very detailed case study presentation. I would also want to take opportunity, Vikrant, who is also a master trainer, together with me. We are actually teaching this skill of EV systems engineering and applying to fleet design and planning. Vikrant, if you can share your new course launch that you are planning for January, that will be great. And with that, we can conclude this webinar for today.
Yeah. I would request Swapnil or Saudamini to share it while I speak on it. While it is being brought up, as Rahul said, these are the skills, or these are the learnings that are being also taught through our EV Academy. And as part of systems engineering as applied to electric vehicles, these are the things which actually make the right case, both for a product designer, for a customer who is looking for a right model for his application, and overall the penetration of the electric vehicle would grow if these skills are applied correctly. So let me bring up the page itself.
Vikrant, in the meantime, you are getting up. Kaustuv, you have been into the industry for very long, and before into consulting, and now as an entrepreneur, setting up this business and participating in many deployments and tenders. What do you think is the importance of such level of planning? Do you think like this level of detailed technical planning avoids the risks and failures of EVs and broader charging infrastructure business that you must be seeing across in India, happening across different segments? Like I have witnessed in electric buses, where our buses are falling short by almost 50% of the stated specs, and the utilization of the fleet remains very low. What do you think, like the importance of such planning and work done in this study?
Yeah, absolutely, Rahul. So planning would be a key factor and element in understanding and ensuring that this model works for in a long run. Considering kind of lack of awareness and things and the technologies being pushed by certain in certain segments by certain players. So large level awareness is not there to the end users, like what kind of a product they should select, what is the right fit or the right technology they should select for the application or their use case. So with that, what happens is they will end up saying, yeah, this works or this.
I think what Kaustuv wanted to talk about was that the need of such specific technical planning is very important before deploying any EV fleet business. In a Pre-Manifold EV Academy, they have brought two courses. Two batches of EV systems engineering is concluding, and there is a new course on battery simulation and modeling, which is starting from 4th January. And there is another course starting from 12th January, which goes into the deeper aspects of electric bus system planning. So I do encourage our participants to look into the details on our website and be part of this course, with which you can actually be able to do the similar modeling that we kind of discussed in the electric truck application to any kind of EV planning, either at a vehicle level when you go for battery modeling course, or at the entire fleet level when you go for the electric bus system modeling course. Now you're audible, Vikrant. So if you can just give our participants a flavor of the two new courses
Yeah.
that we are undertaking in January, that will be great. I have given a quick background about the two courses, Vikrant.
The programs that we are launching now. So we already have finished two batches of electric vehicle systems engineering, which is kind of the work that we spoke about. So this would be the perfect application of that. And then now from the brand new year, from 4th of January, we are starting a batch of battery modeling and simulation, which will apply the same systems engineering principle, but now to a subsystem, that is the battery, along with the battery management system. How do we model it, and how do we use these virtual models to size and select and size the right battery for a particular application, along with the controller features. And then next on 12th of January, we are launching the eBus planning and optimization training program, which would delve deeper into the planning and scheduling aspects that we spoke about for this application, for this case study today. How to schedule the charging, how to select the routes, how to do energy modeling of the routes, and how to select the charging locations, whether to go for opportunity charging or not, and so on. So all these questions, how do we address in a particular case to case basis, will be imparted. The training on this will be imparted in this course. Looking forward for your participation in those as well, and we will have the next batch of EV systems engineering later in the next quarter, so February or March.
Thank you very much, Vikrant. I think with that we will conclude today's session. On the note that decarbonization of freight applications in transportation has high value and high potential. Almost 40% of GHG is contributed through road transport freight, and electrification of this fleet from small, medium, and heavy trucks are possible with current technology, and it will overall improve. And that's definitely a route while worthy to be applied for the applications that we have discussed today. So thank you very much, and thank you for your participation, and good day. Thank you.